The sound of a distant train whistle pierced the June morning air as Clara Wilson's wedding veil fluttered wildly in the breeze. Her white dress, stained with mud at the hem from her desperate run, clung to her shaking frame as she stood alone on the platform of Silver Creek Station, Montana, 1885. The train was pulling away, the very train that was supposed to carry her to her new life as Mrs. Frederick Thornton. Instead, it carried only her abandoned trunk and the shattered pieces of a future she'd just rejected. Clara fell to her knees, her shoulders heaving with each sob. She had done it, she had run away from her own wedding. The weight of her decision crushed her chest, making it difficult to breathe. Frederick's wealthy family had arranged everything, even selecting her wedding dress. They would be furious, her own family humiliated. But she couldn't marry a man who saw her as nothing more than a trophy, a business arrangement. "Miss, are you all right?" The deep, gentle voice startled her. Clara looked up through tear-blurred eyes to see a tall figure silhouetted against the morning sun. As her vision cleared, she saw a man with kind eyes the color of a summer sky, his face weathered by the elements but handsome in its rugged way. A cowboy hat sat atop his sandy brown hair, and his simple clothes spoke of honest work rather than society's finery. I'm fine," she lied, hastily wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "Don't look fine to me." The man crouched down to her level, respectfully keeping some distance. "Name's Owen Norris. I've got a wagon headed west to Helena. Need a ride somewhere." Clara stared at him, then back at the now empty train tracks. She had no plan, no money, nowhere to go. Her family would never understand what she'd done, and Frederick's family would make sure she was ostracized from society. "I don't know where I'm going," she admitted, her voice breaking. Owen Norris nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Sometimes that's the best time for a journey." He extended his hand. "My wagon ain't fancy, but it's headed somewhere that ain't here. That sound good enough for now?" Clara hesitated only a moment before placing her trembling hand in his. "Yes." "Thank you, Mr. Norris. Just Owen is fine," he said, helping her to her feet. "And you are Clara Wilson." She didn't add that she had nearly been Clara Thornton just an hour ago. Owen led her to a sturdy wagon loaded with supplies and pulled by 2 strong horses. "It ain't a train car, but these horses know the way better than any conductor." Clara managed a weak smile as Owen helped her climb aboard. The simple wooden seat had a blanket thrown over it for comfort. As she settled in, she realized how impulsive her decision had been. Here she was, a respectable young woman of 22, climbing into a wagon with a stranger. "Mr. Norris Owen, I should tell you that I've just run away from my own wedding." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Owen's eyebrows rose slightly as he took the reins. "Figured it was something like that, what with the dress and all." He clicked his tongue and the horses began to move. "Don't worry, Miss Wilson, your business is your own. I'm just offering a ride, not asking for your life story." Relief washed over Clara. "Thank you." As they left the small town behind, Clara stared at the vast Montana landscape stretching before them. The rolling hills covered in summer wildflowers seemed to symbolize a freedom she'd never considered possible. For the first time that day, she took a deep breath that didn't hurt her chest. "May I ask where exactly we're headed?" she ventured after they'd traveled in comfortable silence for nearly an hour. "I've got a small ranch about 3 days' journey from here," Owen replied. "Was in town delivering some horses. Got a neighbor about a day's ride from here who might be able to help you figure out your next steps if you'd like." "A neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy?" "Widowed lady who runs a trading post. Good woman, fair-minded, might have work for you or know somewhere that does." Clara looked down at her ruined wedding dress and laughed suddenly, the sound surprising even her. "I'm not sure what skills I have that would be useful out here." Owen glanced at her, a small smile playing at his lips. "Can you read and write?" "Yes, of course." "Count money without making mistakes?" "Certainly." "Then you already have more skills than half the people passing through these parts." As they continued their journey, Clara watched Owen handle the team with confident ease. His strong, tanned hands held the reins loosely, his posture relaxed yet alert. There was something comforting about his presence, a steady reliability that made her feel safe despite the uncertainty of her situation. By midday, the sun beat down mercilessly. Owen pulled the wagon into the shade of some cottonwood trees beside a small creek. "We'll rest the horses a bit," he explained, jumping down and coming around to help her. Clara accepted his hand, acutely aware of how inappropriate her wedding dress was for travel. The once pristine white silk was now dusty and wrinkled, the elaborate lace trimmings catching on everything. "You might want to refresh yourself at the creek," Owen suggested kindly. "I'll fix us something to eat." Clara made her way to the creek, kneeling beside the clear water. As she splashed the cool water on her face, she caught her reflection. Her carefully arranged hair had mostly fallen down, and her face was streaked with the remnants of tears. She looked wild, untamed, and somehow more herself than she had in years. When she returned, Owen had laid out a simple meal of jerky, bread, and dried apples. He'd also pulled a bundle from the wagon. "It ain't much," he said, holding out the package to her, "but I thought you might be more comfortable in these. They belonged to my sister before she married and moved to Oregon. She's about your size." Clara accepted the bundle with trembling hands. Inside was a simple calico dress, a shawl, and some other necessities. I don't know what to say," she whispered, overcome by this unexpected kindness. Owen looked slightly embarrassed. "It's nothing fancy, just practical." "Thank you, truly." He nodded, then gestured to a cluster of trees. "You can change over there if you'd like, I'll keep my back turned." The simple dress felt like freedom after the constricting wedding gown. Clara folded her abandoned wedding dress carefully, not quite ready to discard it entirely. When she emerged, Owen was feeding the horses, his back to her as promised. "I'm decent now," she called. He turned, and something in his expression made her cheeks warm. It wasn't improper or forward, just appreciative in a way that made her feel seen rather than appraised. "Suits you," he said simply, then returned to his task. As they ate their simple meal, Clara found herself opening up. "I was supposed to marry Frederick Thornton. Our families arranged it. His father owns the largest cattle operation in the territory, and my father's the banker who finances most of the local ranches." Owen nodded, listening without judgment. "Frederick never saw me, not really," she continued. "He saw a proper wife who would host his parties and bear his children and never have an opinion that wasn't his. This morning, I realized I couldn't breathe at the thought of that life stretching before me for the next 50 years. "So you ran," Owen said softly. "So I ran." Clara sighed. "My family will never forgive me. Maybe, or maybe they'll surprise you." Owen gathered their few dishes. "People can surprise you when you give them the chance." They continued their journey through the afternoon, the landscape gradually changing as they traveled. Clara found herself relaxing in Owen's company. He wasn't talkative, but when he did speak, his words were thoughtful and often laced with a dry humor she appreciated. As the sun began to set, Owen guided the wagon off the main trail to a sheltered spot beside a small stand of trees. "We'll camp here for the night," he explained. "It's protected from the wind and there's good grass for the horses." Clara realized she had never spent a night outdoors in her entire life. The enormity of her situation suddenly hit her anew, and she must have looked distressed because Owen's expression softened. "Don't worry, Miss Wilson. You'll be perfectly safe. I'll sleep under the wagon and you can have the wagon bed. I've got plenty of blankets." True to his word, Owen efficiently set up their camp, building a small fire and preparing a simple but satisfying supper of beans and bacon with coffee. The coffee was strong and bitter, nothing like the properly served tea Clara was accustomed to, but she found it oddly comforting. As darkness fell, the vastness of the Montana sky revealed itself in all its glory. Clara gasped at the canopy of stars overhead, brighter and more numerous than she'd ever seen in town. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Owen looked up from tending the fire. "It sure is. Never gets old, no matter how many times I see it." "Have you always lived out here?" Clara asked, wrapping the borrowed shawl more tightly around her shoulders against the evening chill. Owen poured himself another cup of coffee before answering. "Born in Pennsylvania. My pa brought us west after the war between the states. He'd had enough of fighting and wanted open spaces." He stared into the fire. "Lost him and Ma to fever when I was 16. Been on my own mostly since then, except for my sister until she married." "I'm sorry," Clara said softly. Owen shrugged. "It was a long time ago. Built my own place these past 10 years. It ain't much compared to what you're used to, but it's mine." "That sounds wonderful, actually," Clara admitted, "to have something that's truly yours." As the night deepened, Owen showed her how he'd arranged blankets in the wagon bed to make a comfortable sleeping place. "If you need anything in the night, just call out," he told her. "I'm a light sleeper." Clara climbed into the wagon, settling herself among the blankets. They smelled of clean air and sunshine. Through a gap in the wagon cover, she could see stars twinkling overhead. Despite everything, she felt a strange peace stealing over her. For the first time in her life, she was making her own choices, facing her own consequences. She fell asleep to the sound of Owen's quiet movements as he banked the fire for the night, and the gentle nickering of the horses nearby. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Disoriented for a moment, she sat up quickly before remembering where she was. Sunlight streamed through the wagon cover and she could hear Owen moving around outside. She quickly tidied her hair as best she could and climbed down from the wagon. Owen stood by the fire, cooking breakfast. He looked up as she approached. "Morning," he greeted her. "Sleep all right?" "Better than I expected," she admitted. "What can I help with?" He seemed surprised by her offer but nodded towards some tin plates. "Could set those out if you don't mind." They ate breakfast together as the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the landscape. Clara found herself studying Owen when he wasn't looking the way his hands moved with confident efficiency. The slight crow's feet at the corners of his eyes that deepened when he smiled. The way he treated her with respect, without any of the forced gallantry she was accustomed to from men of her social circle. After breakfast, they packed up camp and continued their journey. The second day passed much like the first, with easy conversation interspersed with comfortable silences. Clara learned that Owen ran a modest ranch with a small herd of cattle and bred horses. He told her stories about the characters he'd met in his travels, making her laugh with his wry observations. In turn, she told him about growing up as a banker's daughter, always expected to be proper and composed. "I used to sneak my brother's books to read when no one was looking," she confessed. "Adventure stories, mostly. My mother would have been scandalized. And here you are, living your own adventure story," Owen remarked. Clara smiled at the thought. "I suppose I am." By late afternoon, they reached Mrs. Abernathy's trading post, a sturdy log building with a wide porch, situated at a crossroads. A plume of smoke rose from the chimney, and several horses were hitched outside. Owen helped Clara down from the wagon. "Mrs. Abernathy's a good sort," he assured her. "She'll help you figure things out if you decide not to continue on with me." Clara was surprised to realize she hadn't been thinking about leaving Owen's company. The idea now filled her with an unexpected sadness. Mrs. Abernathy turned out to be a tall, angular woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She welcomed them warmly, ushering them inside the trading post where several travelers were gathered around a large table. "Owen Norris, as I live and breathe," she exclaimed. "And who's this you've brought with you?" "This is Miss Clara Wilson," Owen introduced her. "She's in need of a fresh start." Mrs. Abernathy's eyes softened with understanding. "Aren't we all at some point, dear? Come, sit down, you must be tired from traveling." Over a hearty meal of stew and cornbread, Clara observed the easy camaraderie between Owen and the other travelers. These people lived by a different code than those in her former social circle. Here, a person was judged by their actions and character rather than their family name or fortune. After dinner, Mrs. Abernathy showed Clara to a small but clean room at the back of the trading post. You can stay here tonight, she offered. Tomorrow we can talk about whether you want to stay on and help me with the books or if you're heading elsewhere. Clara thanked her, then hesitated. Where will Owen be staying? Oh, he usually sleeps in the bunkhouse out back with the other men passing through, Mrs. Abernathy explained. He'll be perfectly comfortable. Later that evening, Clara found Owen sitting alone on the porch, smoking a cigarette and gazing at the stars. She sat down beside him, drawing her shawl around her against the night chill. Mrs. Abernathy seems nice, she said. She offered me work helping with her accounts. Owen nodded. She's fair and honest, you could do worse. Clara studied his profile in the dim light spilling from the trading post windows. When do you leave tomorrow? First light, probably. He tapped ash from his cigarette. Got supplies to deliver back to my place. Clara gathered her courage. I've been thinking. Would it be possible for me to continue with you, at least until I figure out what I want to do next? Owen turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. It's another 2 days hard travel to my place, and it's mighty isolated out there, not much in the way of society or comforts. I'm discovering I don't need as many comforts as I thought, Clara replied. And as for society, I'm not sure I want to be found just yet. Owen studied her for a long moment. It's your decision, Miss Wilson. You're welcome to continue on with me if that's what you want. It is, she said softly, and please call me Clara. The next morning, they bid farewell to Mrs. Abernathy, who pressed a package of food and a spare blanket into Clara's hands. You take care now, she told Clara with a knowing look, and remember, my door's always open if you need it. As they continued their journey, the landscape became wilder, more rugged. Owen pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the area where a stagecoach had once been robbed, which mountain passes became impassable in winter, the best places to find wild berries in late summer. That night, as they made camp, a sudden thunderstorm forced them both to shelter in the wagon. Sitting across from each other in the close confines, illuminated only by a small lantern, Clara became acutely aware of Owen as a man, his broad shoulders, the strength in his hands, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. I never thought I'd end up here, she admitted as rain drummed on the wagon cover. A week ago, my biggest worry was whether the flowers for my wedding would arrive on time. Owen chuckled. Life has a way of taking unexpected turns. Do you ever get lonely? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Out here, I mean, Owen considered this. Sometimes, but then I was lonely plenty in crowded places too. He met her eyes. It's not about how many people are around you, it's about being understood. Clara nodded, feeling a connection to this man that defied explanation. In just days, he'd shown her more genuine kindness and understanding than Frederick had in 2 years of courtship. The storm passed overnight, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling in the morning light. They traveled through a landscape of increasing beauty, vast meadows carpeted with wildflowers, forests of pine and aspen, mountains rising majestically in the distance. By late afternoon of their 4th day together, Owen pointed to a distant valley nestled between rolling hills. There it is, home. Clara followed his gaze to see a modest cabin with several outbuildings, nestled beside a creek with willows swaying along its banks. A small herd of cattle grazed in nearby pastures, and horses moved about in a corral near the barn. It's beautiful, she said sincerely. As they approached, a dog came bounding out to meet them, barking joyfully. Owen smiled, the most relaxed Clara had seen him. That's Buck. He's harmless, just excited to see us. The ranch was simple but well kept. The cabin, though small, was sturdy and clean, with a covered porch spanning the front. Inside, Clara found it surprisingly comfortable, a main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, and 2 doors leading to what she assumed were bedrooms. It ain't much, Owen said, suddenly seeming self-conscious. But it's mine. It's wonderful, Clara told him honestly. Owen showed her to a small bedroom that had belonged to his sister. You can stay here as long as you need, he assured her. No pressure to decide anything right away. The days that followed fell into a comfortable routine. Owen worked from sunrise to sunset, tending his animals and maintaining the ranch. Clara, determined not to be idle, took over the cooking and household tasks. She discovered a vegetable garden behind the cabin that had been somewhat neglected and threw herself into reviving it. Owen initially protested that she shouldn't be doing so much work, but Clara insisted. "I want to earn my keep," she told him firmly. "And besides, I'm finding I enjoy it." It was true. There was a satisfaction in physical work that Clara had never experienced before, the tangible results of her efforts visible in the reviving garden, the organized kitchen, the freshly baked bread cooling on the windowsill. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk. Owen told her about his dreams for the ranch, how he wanted to expand his horse breeding operation. Clara shared stories from her childhood, the parts that had brought her joy rather than the constant pressure to be perfect. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Owen returned from town with a package. "Stopped by the general store," he explained, handing it to her somewhat awkwardly. "Thought you might need some things of your own." Inside, Clara found fabric for new dresses, a hairbrush, soap that smelled of lavender, and a book of poetry. Tears sprang to her eyes at his thoughtfulness. "Thank you," she whispered. No one's ever." Owen shrugged, embarrassed by her emotion. "It's nothing fancy." "It's perfect," she insisted. That night, Clara lay awake thinking about Owen Norris, a man so different from anyone she'd known before. He was honest in a way that had nothing to do with social niceties and everything to do with character. His hands were calloused from hard work, his face weathered by sun and wind, but there was a gentleness to him that touched her deeply. She realized with sudden clarity that she was falling in love with him. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. The next day, a letter arrived from town. The storekeeper had forwarded it from Silver Creek Station. It was from Clara's mother, expressing worry and confusion over her disappearance. The letter ended with a plea for Clara to come home, saying that all would be forgiven if she would just return. Clara sat on the porch steps, rereading the letter as the sun set. Owen found her there, her expression troubled. "Bad news?" he asked, sitting beside her. She handed him the letter. "My mother wants me to come home." Owen read it silently, then returned it to her. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," Clara admitted. "Part of me feels I should go back and face everyone, explain myself at least, but another part—" "Another part," Owen prompted gently when she trailed off. Clara took a deep breath. "Another part wants to stay here with you." The words hung between them in the twilight air. Owen was silent for so long that Clara began to fear she'd misread everything, that the connection she felt was one-sided. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and sincere. "I'd like that more than I can say, Clara. But I need to be sure it's what you really want. This life, it ain't easy, it ain't what you're used to." "I know that," she said firmly. "These past weeks have been the happiest of my life, Owen, not because it's been easy, but because it's been real." She turned to face him fully. "I was meant to marry a man I didn't love because it was expected of me. I don't want to live that way anymore." Owen reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, and took her hand in his. "I never expected to find someone like you," he admitted. "I figured my life would just be this ranch and my animals, didn't think there was room for more. And now," Clara asked softly, "now I'm thinking there might be." He squeezed her hand gently. "But I want you to be sure. Maybe you should go home, tell your family face to face what you want. If afterward you still want this life, want me, then I'll be waiting." Clara considered his words. "You're right," she finally said. "I need to face them, but I want you to come with me." Owen looked surprised. "You sure about that?" "Absolutely," Clara said firmly. "I want them to meet the man I've fallen in love with." Owen's eyes widened at her declaration, then softened. He leaned forward slowly and pressed his lips to hers in a gentle kiss that made Clara's heart race. When he pulled back, his smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Then I'll come with you," he promised. 2 weeks later, Owen and Clara stood on the porch of her family home in Silver Creek. Clara wore one of the new dresses she'd made from the fabric Owen had bought her, simple but elegant. Owen had put on his best shirt and even got a haircut in town. "Ready?" he asked, squeezing her hand. Clara nodded, her heart pounding. "Ready." The reunion with her family was emotional, but not the disaster Clara had feared. Her mother wept with relief, her father was stern but ultimately relieved to see her safe. Her younger sister seemed secretly impressed by Clara's adventure and handsome cowboy. Frederick and his family were another matter. They had spread rumors about Clara's mental stability and morals after her disappearance. But faced with Clara's quiet dignity and Owen's steady presence, their malice seemed petty and transparent. "I'm sorry for the pain I caused," Clara told her parents honestly. "But I couldn't marry a man I didn't love, not when I knew what real love could be." Her father studied Owen with narrowed eyes. "And you believe you found that with Mr. Norris here?" "I know I have," Clara replied without hesitation. Over the following days, Owen impressed Clara's father with his knowledge of ranching and his straightforward business sense. Her mother was won over by his obvious devotion to Clara and his respectful manners despite his rough exterior. A month after their arrival, Owen and Clara were married in a simple ceremony in her parents' garden. It was nothing like the elaborate wedding that had been planned with Frederick, but it was filled with genuine joy and love. "I never thought I'd be happy to see my daughter marry a rancher," Clara's father admitted at the small reception. "But I've never seen her look at anyone the way she looks at you, Norris," Owen smiled. "I'll spend my life trying to be worthy of that look, sir." As they prepared to return to Owen's ranch, their ranch now, Clara's mother pressed a substantial check into her hand. "Your inheritance," she explained. "Use it to build your life together." Clara and Owen used that money to expand the ranch, adding a proper guest room to the cabin and purchasing additional breeding stock for their growing horse business. Owen's reputation for quality quarter horses spread throughout the territory, bringing buyers from as far away as Denver. 2 years after their wedding, Clara gave birth to a daughter they named Emma, followed by a son, Thomas, 18 months later. The cabin expanded again to accommodate their growing family. On their 5th anniversary, Owen presented Clara with a gift, a small writing desk placed by the window overlooking the valley. "For your stories," he explained. "You always said you wanted to write down those adventures you read about as a girl." Clara's stories, inspired by her own journey and the characters she'd met along the way, eventually found their way to a publisher in San Francisco. Her tales of frontier life, particularly those featuring strong women making their own choices, resonated with readers across the country. On quiet evenings, after the children were asleep, Clara and Owen would sit together on their porch watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in spectacular colors. Sometimes they would reminisce about that day at Silver Creek Station, Clara in her mudded wedding dress, weeping as the train pulled away, and Owen offering her a place in his wagon. "I'm glad you didn't get on that train," Owen would say, his arm around her shoulders. And Clara, leaning into the embrace of the man who had helped her find her true self, would smile and reply, "That was the best decision I ever made." They built a life together marked by hard work, mutual respect, and deep love, a life neither of them had imagined that fateful day when a train departed, a bride wept, and a cowboy offered not just a ride in his wagon, but ultimately a journey to happiness neither had dared to dream possible.